You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of my live podcast, Heal Through Humor. Today, I am excited to bring back a returning guest. I love her Instagram handle, at NoBS Therapist. Her name is Jacquelyn Tenaglia, and if I'm going to correct myself near immediately when she joins, and I'm really excited for this interview. She has been a longtime colleague, and we met through Instagram, and it's been wonderful to be able to chat and send memes back and forth to each other along these months that we've known each other. So today we're going to go live and talk about dating and relationships, how social media has changed some of the landscape, I would say, of some of our relationships and all these terms that we hear being thrown around, and just have a general chat and be able to laugh with each other. So we're just waiting for Instagram to do its thing and let Jacquelyn in. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you can always chat them in and we will get to them as soon as we're able. If you are catching the replay of this, if you have any questions for Jacquelyn or I, please type them in the comments and we will get back to them whenever we're able to after this posts. So this is the fun part of doing your podcast on Instagram Live. We might have to restart this. All right, accept. Let's see if this works. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Oh, did it work?
Hi. Yes.
Paula at your girl. Awesome. Okay. Hello. How are you?
It's so good to see you.
Good too. It's been a while.
I think we did this in September.
Yes. It's way too long, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How's your day going?
Good, thanks. You're the last appointment of the day, so.
Bless up. Perfect.
Yep. Good to be done. And it's been a busy month because I've been teaching at BC. I think I told you.
Yeah.
So it's a summer intensive. So twice a week for 3 hours each time I've been teaching for the first time, my first semester teaching. I really like it.
Teaching isn't it so much fun?
Yeah. It's enjoyable.
Fun.
It's the same grad program that I went to. So there's a real personal connection there.
Yes, I teach at the same school I went to many years ago.
Really?
So, oh yeah. And it's like same building, same campus for the most part. So it's really nice to have that familiarity and to teach psychology.
Definitely.
So yeah,
the professors are the same. It's like a time warp.
Now my professors are my colleagues. Like my former professors, like we're on a first name basis. So like, I'm still going to call you professor last name. That's
I know.
My first name. Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Awesome. So your Instagram has taken off, I see, rightfully so, because you post amazing content. So catch me up. What's been happening?
Thank you. The last time you and I talked in September, I think I had like 3, not even 3,000. Yeah. And now I've got over 10. So
yay.
It's crazy how things can take off in just a couple of months.
Yes.
And Twitter really was responsible for that. So I had this account in 2013. I noticed that no one had the account Tweet a Therapist. And so I was like, I have to grab that handle. Even if I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, I need to just take it.
Yes.
So from like 2013 until just a couple of months ago, I would tweet like once a year. I just never used it. I didn't get Twitter.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, I just started tweeting more recently, and that's been a really fun outlet too. There's a lot of networking on Twitter as well. Not as much as Instagram, but it's been just another avenue.
Yeah, I'm trying to slowly convince myself to get on Twitter because I was talking to somebody like a lot of the things you want to post, like good for Instagram, but also like it could be a tweet. And I'm like, do I really want to have a platform on?
I know what you mean. I know.
Yeah.
I already feel connected to my phone and my iPad. So yeah, I hear you on that.
I would like less ties to be connected to the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're on Twitter probably, obviously way more than I am, having no account at all. How do you see social media and mental health? Is it making it more accessible? Is it making it too accessible? Are there terms being thrown around? Catch me up and the listeners up on what's the haps on Twitter.
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like such a poser even talking about it because I'm still so brand new to Twitter, which makes me sound so old. But it's more, Instagram has more, you know, here are some coping skills.
Got it.
here's a thread on how to do something,
Mm-hmm,
how to
mm-hmm.
help yourself,
Right.
things of that nature, whereas Twitter is more, here's a thought that, or here's a statistic about mental health,
Got it.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's more,
People who joined, feel free to chime
yeah.
in because I could have that totally wrong. But
No, and that's what I've seen too from other people's tweets. It's like a fact or an opinion that either
yeah,
people
fact,
are
thought, and
opposed on or
opinion.
they're really into.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Good.
But you're not on it at all.
Go
I
ahead.
just got booted off because I have app limits. So
Oh, oh no. Well, we're here.
back.
Well, I hope we're back now.
Anyways, how have you been? Catch me up in the last 6 months.
Good. Work has been wonderful. Clients have been wonderful. Back on social media, meme game strong. I think right when we had talked last, you and I were talking about like the direction of the pages and like how we wanted them to go. And I was shifting into like more of a team working for me, which was fun, super helpful, but going like hard stop, going from being all memes to being more of like my own quotes
Oh yeah.
saying about Twitter. I'm like, yeah, hindsight, I could have done like a soft launch of my own thoughts on it and not just done like a full 180, but that's like so who I am. So I think post public identity crisis and so many bio breakdowns, I'm like back to where I needed to be. So I feel better like doing the podcast again and being able to interview, like stay connected, because this was such a big part of what got me through COVID was my other podcast between two clinicians, and then more. But as I was telling you, like I think I'm just going to bring that one back because I feel like it's so much, I don't know, there's just something about it. And like you were saying, like structured interview wise, I think there's just something about it that I really like, and to be able to get to know other people.
And how did you meet all of the clinicians that you interviewed? So you and I met over Instagram. Did you meet them all over Instagram as well?
Instagram, Facebook, yeah. Yeah. So I liked it. I like it a lot. And I think this could be a good like segue or foray for us practicing half the interview. But if you want to tell other listeners who may be tuning in after this, like who you are, who you treat, what your specialties are, and then we can go from there and dive in and talk about relationships.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jacquelyn Tenaglia. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, LMHC, and I practice in Boston. Also licensed to practice in New York. And so for 11 years, I worked in the field of substance use disorders. I was working at a methadone clinic doing individual and group counseling. So my specialty is substance use disorders, and that's the class that I'm teaching at BC. It's counseling for drug and alcohol. But that has become a little bit less of my practice, the bulk of my the bulk of my clients, and I just see more people with generalized anxiety. And just work stress. Stress management is a big theme in session. I know it's a theme in every session, right? But
especially after COVID.
Yeah, for sure. So and I also like working with people who have either health anxiety or maybe they're struggling with chronic health issues, having several myself. So that's something that I like to help other people navigate, having gone through it firsthand.
How do you, like, if at all, how did you see the landscape of your clientele changing throughout the pandemic?
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like it stayed the same, but there were just so many more inquiries.
Yeah.
You know, everyone wanted to, counseling was already kind of becoming more popular, but then the pandemic really made that skyrocket. So 2020 was my busiest year.
Same. So I feel like half of me is still reeling from it. The other half is like,
yes.
Okay, whew, I'm breathing. We're good. We're not seeing as many people. I can function again. Yeah. It was intense.
Yeah.
It was intense year.
Not to mention I was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor that year and had surgery. So it was just chaos.
Yeah. Talk about health things. Wow.
Yeah, I'm doing well now. Good. But it just really compounded that stress.
So what are your favorite ways to cope with stress personally?
I think I might have mentioned in a past live maybe, but I do aerial acrobatics, and that's just such a great stress management skill that I rely on. And I've done a couple of shows for small audiences, which is really fun. It's a great winter activity. Um, what else? Music, running, barn yoga, kind of more basic things.
Yeah.
But I think for me, connecting is really a stress management technique. You know, I like to be with people instead
Yes.
of withdrawing, although I definitely need my time to myself to decompress as well.
Yeah, I think there's a balance to strike between de-stressing by connecting with others and de-stressing by like being alone with your own thoughts and or music and like, oh, okay, I have space to breathe and like think or not think.
Yeah, what about you?
De-stressing, working out for sure. I work out like 6 a week. I don't think I function properly without it. I'm very tense about my fitness routine and my food routine, and being around puppies. I'm obsessed with animals.
Oh,
Who knows me
do you
knows
have one?
I used to have a dog, and she was not a good match for being a therapy dog. A lot of aggressive tendencies. Like after I fostered and adopted her, I was like, okay, this is just like a liability at this point. So I was able to find her like an actual like multiple acre ranch with a family who worked from home, like way better, joyous, super happy. And I'm like, okay. And I basically adopt all of my other friends' dogs and just hang out with them. And I love, yeah. So animals.
Did you have the dog in the office because it was a therapy dog, or
I
for
wanted
you?
a dog in the office, but when we were doing the training portion of it, it was apparent that her aggressive tendencies would not have been a good match for being a therapy dog. So I'm glad I learned that like prior to
I'm sorry for laughing.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave it to me to like try and do the rescuing thing and pick the dog being the therapy dog, but that's, you know.
That's great.
Yeah. So de-stress, working out, love animals. I love connecting with other people also. I find that like I have to break up my routine from seeing clients and actually dive into doing lives or doing other posts or reels because I like the engagement that I see and being able to talk about like topics that I think are of interest. And I don't know when it was. I think it was like last week, one of your posts, and I should have had it pulled up ahead of time to reference it, but it was the something about like not being able to like self-help your way out of.
Here, I'll pull it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just that the idea that we're kind of always working on, so maybe you don't need more self-help tips or inspirational quotes. Maybe you need more experiences of safety, security, and laughter.
Yes.
Yes. That one.
That's the one. Okay, so can you talk more about that post? Because I feel like that's very poignant and that's a good topic for us to dive into.
Yeah, well, especially I feel like we live in this age where we're all on this like quest, or a lot of us are on a quest for self-improvement.
Yes.
And self-help, and there's so much content out there. It's overwhelming, I think. And there's just so many different ways that we can help ourselves, whether it's content on social media, self-help books, therapy, journals, workbooks, you name it, right? But sometimes what we really need is to heal in the context of relationships. As we're saying, stress management for us is connecting with people. And, you know, our interpersonal like relationship breakdowns that happen in the context of relationships, we can only heal from those in the context of healthy and happy relationships that are safe and secure and that allow us to be ourselves, where we feel accepted and just that the person has positive regard for us.
Yes.
Maybe they don't agree with all of our decisions, but they support us in our ability to make our own decisions, that kind of thing. And as far as, well, I wasn't sure if you had anything to add on that. I don't want to keep rambling.
I would say the mix of self-knowledge and self-development. I think, as I posted a meme, it was like a while ago, and it was like, has anybody told you you're really self-aware? And the person's response was like, yeah, I think that's part of the problem. Like being so self-aware or having so much knowledge on that quest for self-development, you could have, any one person could have all of the tools in the world, but my really big thing, especially being psychoanalytic, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, a lot of it is just going to be like stress. Like at best, you're trying to manage your stress by problem solving and troubleshooting. And we've all called Comcast Cable. We've all called customer service, right? You're just like yelling at it. It's like, sorry, didn't hear you. Like that's how it can feel when you think you know what you need. And then the other person is like not being responsive to you, or you're getting so frustrated and agitated. All of my skills will go out the window. If I'm like real person, like even when I'm on chat with customer service, that's like
representative.
Representative. That's like my most impatient self. And I think having all those skills, sometimes we get frustrated because we don't know which one to use, or we are using a beneficial coping skill, but it's not being applied properly to the situation, or what we really need deep down is connection with a relationship. And it doesn't have to be, I know we talked a little bit before, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. I think it's two people relating and having a human interaction. And that's where
which could be a therapist.
Which ideally should be a therapist. We get kind of jammed up in that. And I wanted to ask your opinion on this too. On Instagram, there's this school of thought of like, you have to be fully healed. Like one school is like, you have to be fully healed before you can date or be in a relationship. And then the other half, and obviously there's a middle ground, but like the other half is like, oh, you can only heal in the context of a relationship. It's like, it's the middle ground. Like if you're wounded actively and licking your wounds and the phrase goes, bleeding on people who didn't cut you, then I would say we need to slow it down, do the introspection without it being an actual dating or romantic relationship, and instead be with a therapist or try and get a new kind of support system in place. So I wanted to ask you what you thought about that.
Did you see my stories from today?
Yeah. Yes. And that's why.
And the first one by Matt Kama or something?
Yes.
So that's what you were thinking of. Yeah. And just how it talks about you can do all the work in the background, but it's ultimately when you're in a romantic relationship that the triggers and the wounds will surface and need to and be more effectively addressed in the context of a relationship as opposed to just doing behind the scenes work. So no, you don't need to be this like fully healed person, right? Because that's just impossible. We're all carrying around residue from our past.
True.
I am, you are, right? So to think that we're going to arrive at this place where we don't need to, it's like I've hit my peak working on myself and now I'm ready to be in a relationship. It doesn't work that way. If only it did, but it does not.
I think it can sometimes, but it is very, very nuanced as to when I've like seen people who are like, okay, I'm intentionally not dating, or I think I'm noticing that I actually get way too activated to even try working through when I'm dating.
Oh yeah.
So
That's a good point.
But that's where I make the recommendation for some people that having a good idea of what the triggers and activations are, where they stem from, it does not prevent it from coming up in a relationship. But words to be able to explain, hey, my brain's doing this thing where it takes childhood. And if you don't have, in a non-activated state, if you don't have that narrative, it's going to be very difficult in an activated state to even have a conversation with your partner. So I'm like kind of maybe the black sheep when it comes to that. But I do think there are some benefits of not being in a relationship or dating, at least for a little bit, while you're of the deeper childhood patterning and work, because so much of at least in our sessions, so much of the content of sessions could be, well, he said this and that's not what I need to hear. Like I need to treat the core underneath. And if you keep just from treating that, then I can't get to healing. And so you don't even have these questions to ask in session because you're going to be in such a secure relationship. We don't need to address, well, what did he mean when he said this? So I see it.
And therapy can be so helpful to come up with a language for that, the thing, right? You know, oh, there's a part of me that likes to people please, or, oh, there's my, like abandonment fear cropping up again. The language is so important, I think, to put words to the things that we do. Yeah. Patterns
that we have. I'm sure you did as well, years ago, knowing about attachment theory and attachment styles. And then it was like this huge wave on social media where And I joke, obviously, it's like everything became a trauma response. Everybody was a narcissist. Everything was love bombing. Everybody has anxious attack. And I'm just like, okay, or maybe we just rein it in. And if you attachment style, you can date more confidently, but we don't need to go around diagnosing life with pretty much everything that we see. If you read the DSM or any of those books, if you took a hard look at it out of context, I'm sure many people could identify with a lot of those diagnostic criteria, but I teach that at to my classes too. Like, any one person could have one of those traits. It doesn't mean automatically that it equals a diagnosis or equals a label.
Yes. And what was I gonna, and I love that book, Attached. I recommend it to so many people who are interested in learning a foundation about attachment theory. But it's very reductionistic for a lot of reasons, but it just kind of sees attachment as like a line, like anxious, avoidant, secure. It's so much more complex than that, right?
Very.
You can. I think that they might say this in the book, but you can be securely attached to your friend, but like anxiously attached to your family, and but in a romantic relationship, you're more like this. Like, it's just but even then, it's not. I don't know, the nuance, right? How important it is for me that we talk about nuance and not being so black and white and reductionistic about these concepts. As lovely as it is that we have this information out there, we need to not kind of compartmentalize ourselves put ourselves in these categories without seeing the bigger picture.
Yes, and I think being on social media, so much of at least what I see, try not to purport or put out, but at least what I see is, because it's catchier, it's edgier, it's, people want an answer. Unfortunately, especially doing psychoanalysis, which is like usually a longer term therapy, and unless you're doing it more of like brief psychodynamic work, you're not going to get the answer in one sitting. And even if I had a crystal ball and I could give it to you, chances, free will, people are still going to go against it. They're still going to do what they want to do. Fingers ingrained, like, they want a quick answer. It's, again, marketing wise, it's catchier, it's edgier to have it be black or white. And even on when I do Q&A, I don't know if you've done Q&A or you see them being done. A lot of people ask like remarkably specific questions about personal situation, or they'll ask it as if I know all of the information and that I could just answer it. And it's like, I don't want. And people message me like 75 messages of their whole life story. I'm like, that's not what this is for. These are more like generally like, what would it be like to set a boundary? Or how can I respond to somebody to my boundary? Like, those kinds of questions, I don't need too much specifics. I can nuance. And those types of like how-tos can be a little more black or white in terms of like, here's a literal skill, try applying it. But then the nuance comes in of, how do you feel about yourself if the skill doesn't work? How are you going to handle it? Or why is it activating to you if that person doesn't respect?
Why is it hard to set a boundary in the first place?
Yes, exactly. So I'm kind of switching the way that I approach doing Q&As and being the person who gives back questions when people ask questions. I'm like, let me answer your question with more questions you can ask yourself to get to the answer. But that's my way of honoring nuance, because I don't have enough information to give a hard and fast answer. Very, very rarely do I come across such black or white advice where I'm like, okay, this is solid and withstands the test of time or what have you. Right. I think nuance is super important.
As you know, that was why I started my account. Just seeing way too much information out there that was so black and white, and it was confusing to me as a clinician. And I thought, if this is confusing to me as a clinician, I can only imagine how confusing this is for the layperson. And it just really bothered me. It felt like it was exploiting people by trying to grab their attention by using sexy headlines and things like that. I mean, I do that too a little bit, but I have so much more respect for the nuance, because I'm not only a mental health provider, but I'm also a consumer of this content. So I'm on both sides of it. And I know what it's like to be a consumer of content. Which is very helpful.
Knowing the ins and outs. And like you said, if we're confused as a provider, I can only imagine the confusion or the enticing feeling of having, oh, it's what, yes, this is for me, right? But everybody's Instagram feed is a very curated, almost manipulated reality that either created for you and you go along with, or you create for yourself. And I'm a fan of people really taking back control of whatever the content might be that they are consuming. And if you're only getting confirmation bias of what you think you're going through and what's happening, you're not really growing as a person, which doesn't need to be a bad thing. You could be further deepening into one school of thought.
Yeah.
Is there room to flex and grow and think alternatively, that perhaps not every single thing is a trauma response? And even in discovering that, some things you didn't know were actually are. Looking at it around it is what I recommend to people.
But even just changing the wording from is a trauma response to might be a trauma, could be, maybe, look into it,
but
talk to a therapist.
Hey, Jacquelyn, you know this? It's not people their answers.
People want answers. I understand that. But it doesn't work like that, you know?
No. And it's, I think, very frustrating. This is where, like, if we had all started, like, if being on social media, you were required to take like a frustration tolerance class, I think the social media landscape would be much different, because it's like you can't always get a quick answer from reading a tweet or reading a post. Sometimes you can, super cool when that happens, but most of the time you have to go much deeper or work with somebody on, here's my life, unpack it with me and for me. What do you think is, and then asking that very specific question. As a therapist, we could give a more directive answer, but I always couch it mainly because of autonomy. Well, this is what it sounds like to me, and you can always choose to do whatever you want. Like, here's a possible answer that you could act upon, and if you don't, it doesn't make a positive or a negative difference of how I view you, right? Like, you're talking about that positive regard, but if you want to have a different result, you probably have to do a different behavior to get yourself there. Yeah.
And don't even get me started on TikTok.
Okay, but I get you started on TikTok, not to add to, I've had a lot of people message me, and even in my like real life talk to me, they're like, you should do TikTok. And I'm like, I do not think I have thick enough skin for some of the things that I've seen and heard that go on of like comments, etc. Like, that just, even the thought of it is activating to me. So intuitively, I think there's something going on where my body's like, don't you dare. What is it like?
Well, I'm not active on it, but I sometimes will have people come in and say, I saw this thing on TikTok. And then and then there's self-diagnosing happening for things that might be relevant, or it might be more mundane and not an actual diagnosis, but just more like the human experience, human condition stuff. So I don't know. It's just, I feel like we're combating misinformation, and it's not getting any easier is what I was trying to say.
Okay. So we had somebody ask, what is the issue with TikTok as it relates to mental health? I think there's obviously more than two. The first two ways or topics to answer this that pop in my mind are, being on TikTok so much is not good for your mental health, regardless that you're consuming, like having your brain landscape be rewired essentially to have that much dopamine and serotonin and the activity, and they draw you in intentionally. Like, the program design is very good at their job, but it's a nefarious scheme to keep you hooked on it. So that's one way to answer it. Another possible way is, depending on the content you are consuming, or your resiliency level, or your interest level, or what you're searching, or what's being presented to you, like, are you being a conscious consumer? Some of the feedback or information, it sounds like you were touching on this also, is actually misinformation or not clinically or scientifically sound or accurate. And so be harmful from what you're sharing. Okay.
Like, I'm thinking of one random one that comes to mind was that I saw just because it was reposted on Instagram, was like, you know, when your boyfriend feels sleepy around you, it means he feels safe, or something. It was.
I saw that one. Yes, I saw that
like,
one.
What?
But what if he's just tired?
We're pathologizing normal human experiences. We're making we're assigning meaning to them that might not have any. We're just, I don't know, they're just, what do you think of that?
I think it's a risk, and I think I'm grateful to have a job, or I'm grateful to have the clinical training and a job in which I can show up to and help to spread accurate, sound clinical, as well as clear up misinformation.
Yes.
And I know that I'm only one person, and it's, I have obviously the ability to make an impact, but I also know it's like stay in my lane, and it's not my job to be like the Instagram or the TikTok police or ethical force, if you will, and be like, well, this is this and this is like that's just not something I have. Like,
Lord knows I try.
Yes, it's not for lack of trying or thinking it internally, seeing a post and I'm like, oh, okay. But the amount of people that I've had walk in, like you're saying, and I saw this on TikTok, and I playfully with my clients, I'm like, okay, what was it this time? And sometimes it's actually really good advice. Like, again, sound advice that was just like a quick, like a life hack. I'm a big fan of discovering life hacks on YouTube or TikTok or social media where it's like, oh, this feels like a good thing to learn, or like, I didn't know I could open this with a can opener. Like little things like that are good versus like trying to heal oneself or diagnose oneself without any sounding board to work off of. That's where I think as a consumer, like if you're the one doing that, I think that can become dangerous because, well, not only can it become dangerous because you don't have anyone filtering it, there's also a lot of joy in being able to work with a client and celebrate their accomplishments. And so if you're going through it solo and you don't have that person to be there alongside you to cheerlead you, even if it is a really you're doing, it can kind of fall flat because we're not getting any sort of reward or approval for it. So that's just a thought to share.
Yeah. And it also feels important to add that there are some reputable counselors on all social media, TikTok included, who are dispensing really valuable information, right? And so it gets a little murky when people with lived experience are trying to like kind of, there's a lot of accounts that are people that don't have any mental health background, but they're speaking from lived experience, and they just might have some things a little inaccurate, like, oh, the X, Y, and Z is a symptom of ADHD. I see that a lot. It's like,
yes.
Yeah. For you, maybe, but that's not a universal sign or symptom, and people need to know that.
Yes. I think that's a really good point, that putting out good, again, like the more of the how-tos, like here's how you can set a boundary. Here's how this might look. And if you're experiencing these feelings, it could be this. Like, again, spreading the general information that one could take and make personally or do more research on, of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, let me give it a Google. But I don't think everybody in the newest generation, this is not a judgment, this is something I've observed working with younger clients.
Yep.
A lot of it is, I saw it, I believe it. There's not a lot of discernment. Again, this is my only sample size I'm working from. This is not a judgment about every single person of the younger population, but it's a lot of, well, I saw it, like we said, well, I walked in and I saw it on TikTok, or I saw it on Instagram. And I think using our critical thinking skills and using more of our discernment skills can be very helpful to get with ourselves. Oh, sounds cool. Let me check if it's true. Or, well, that really activated me. I don't want to follow that account anymore. Like, using your discernment and your critical thinking skills helps you as a consumer to understand what type of content is best for you and what's helpful or not. And like we've said, not everything is boiled down to it's only this type of response. Could it be? Sure. Could it not be? Also true. And the lived experience portion of it, I think it's helpful for people to feel connected and feel like they're not isolated. Of belonging and knowing that one is not experience is a very helpful part of survival, honestly. Like, we thrive off of connection. Like we were talking about in the beginning, stressed out, we want to connect. And if there is a person who, this goes for even certain modalities, like certain actual evidence-based treatment modalities in therapy are good for one type of client and like an apt fit, meaning good, not like morally good or bad. And they're not a good fit for another client. It could just fall completely flat, or it could actually activate something that we don't want it to activate. And same thing with consuming people's content that it's only lived experience, and you follow their exact same protocol, you may not have the same results. And that's too super helpful to listen to it. Absolutely. And it may not work the same for you if you do the same things as that other person. Very similar to therapy or treatment modalities. Like it's not going to land the same for every single person. That's kind of my thought on that aspect of social media.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the shared experiences in the community in social media, I was thinking to myself, well, these are the good parts of social media, and even just connecting with you. When I started my Instagram account, I had no idea that I would meet so many colleagues.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You and so many others are my colleagues now. And I DM people all the time, questions, what are your thoughts on this? Whatever. It's just been really wonderful. There's a whole community there. So, and a lot of us are friends with each other.
Yes. Yes. I think that's really exciting as well. From a professional standpoint, I like social media as a marketing tool, and I like social media as a way to stay connected and get connected to colleagues. Like, I had 6 seasons of Between Two Clinicians, and I met people from all over the country.
That's great.
We are in-person best friends. Like, one of them I'm going to like a concert with in Vegas in October, and we met on my.
So nice.
I've really developed a lot of good friendships. And relationships with other providers and other people in the field that I would have never met otherwise had I been on this platform. So, going so far back as had it not existed. So it's a very interesting cognitive dissonance to hold, like these two opposing forces.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, is this going to be the future of mental health, where it's like we have to feel this pressure to diagnose within 30 seconds? Or is it going to be like this other piece of like, oh, this is so exciting to be able to meet people I never thought I could, because we're connected in a way that would just not actually happen in any other time, space, or era. So it's definitely a mixed feeling that I have towards
duality there. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And but either for better or for worse, it's a big part of our lives.
Yes. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, in my view.
I actually would have thought that Instagram would have fizzled out a little bit by now, because Facebook did by this point, but it doesn't feel that way.
No, I think also, much like if we look at actual generations, like in human beings and adaptations that happen, I think we can almost, not exactly, but in a way kind of overlay it and parallel it to social media, that when we're newer on the game, we have to not only avoid the mistakes that have already been made, we have to create something that's so new and unique as a way for the product/species, whatever, to survive. And so I think in this case, it's like learning what's trending, how to beat out other apps, learning what works. And a lot of times, I think, because Facebook shifted a lot and it got a lot of bad, like, political rap, etc., perhaps reputation it had shifted who was on there and who wanted to be on there. And it was very like ageist. I think there was a lot of people who were like, that's for old people. And like, you talk about like MySpace or AIM or any of those things back, or an 8-track player, like any of those things from decades ago. And people are like, wait, what? And I saw a meme, I was going to share it with you. It was like, or kids nowadays would be mortified that we used to upload full albums to Facebook every time we went out for a night out. And it's like, now you just have Snapchat. Like, these are all modern iterations of things that have existed for a really long time, like photo albums. My family still has like the old school printed photo albums. So it's not for this generation to take pictures and share it. It's the method and means by which we're sharing it. That's the new and exciting part. Yeah.
That makes me think of how there's an app, I guess, where people can take pictures and not see them until the next morning. And it's similar to how we would have, like the disposable cameras.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me that that's something that's an app now. I don't know.
There are so many things that are apps now that I'm like, wait, that's an app? And helpful to know, or like, that should not be an app. Like, should not be an app yet. I have a very distinct feeling of like, this is a good app and this is why does this exist app.
Do you ever have clients or ex-clients, former clients, reach out to you through your account on Instagram?
I'm sure, like send me a message, you mean?
Yeah, or otherwise interact with you. I ask because in
Yeah,
school, you learn if a client
right.
ever friends you on Facebook, you say
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
but I feel like in real life that doesn't normally happen, but it's
Hmm.
say far more likely that someone would reach out to my professional Instagram account, and the laws just and the ethics have not caught up with what's
Correct.
actually happening in real life.
Correct.
So
It's
there's a discrepancy
yeah.
there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll take a little while for the laws and ethics to catch up. I'm
For
sure I
sure.
have clients or former clients who were followers, which feels like an evil word. Like I'm sure there's people who have interacted with me on my professional page. I'll put it that way. I don't respond, I don't engage, I don't interact. And if at any point it's like an article that gets sent or like a reaction to a story or a thanks so much for this, there's I think nuance to it,
Yeah.
especially when my team was working for me, they would have no clue,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's
like
right. That's
they would,
another.
yeah,
That's right. I
react
forgot.
or send a
Hmm.
message on my behalf, and I would obviously like nobody ever has messaged me like, hello, I am your client, blah, blah. Like that's never to my knowledge. I, I don't think that's ever happened. And I have some coaching clients who I've known for and worked with for a long time who found me through Instagram specifically. And there's times where they will send me a post of like, oh, this is so relatable, and the ethics are, I hold myself to the same standard, but the ethics are different in terms of being able to interact. But again, it's like
Hmm.
I filter it as like if it's a general pleasantry or like you're welcome, I personally
Hmm.
feel okay with that. I
You
don't.
stay pretty highly boundaried with
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
lots
Hmm.
of boundaries, and that's also why I don't share a lot of my personal life on
Yeah.
in
No,
other.
you're good about that.
Yeah, it's not shade to anybody else who
I'm a
does,
little
but
TMI.
my partner did not sign up to be on
Yeah.
social media. I want to protect his private.
Aw.
Not sign up to be like I reference it constantly, but I grew up
Yeah.
Catfish and all those other TV shows where maybe not grew up, but like I saw them growing up, and I lived by a fire department. I saw them growing up with how much people can like be unwell and like stalk
Mm.
people and go up. And I've seen other influencers, if you will, and this is no means of like I consider myself as that, but when you have a public page on social media, it's public. It's to the
Hmm.
world. You do not know the level of depths of some people's psyches and what you think is normal and abnormal.
Yeah.
There are some, and this is not supposed to be judgmental, there are some people out there who are not well and do not view reality the same way that a typical
Mm.
would, and they get obsessed or they get this. And like I've heard of some of my professors that worked at my job, like being kidnapped and assaulted. Like there's people out there who are mentally unwell to the point where they don't join in reality in a healthy or legal way. And I would not
Hmm.
myself in that role, nor would I want to exploit the people that
Yeah.
I'm in a relationship with, like the person I'm in a relationship with or my family members. Like I reference them, but I don't need 26 whatever thousand people seeing who they are. Like that just that feels like it violates my own privacy rules for myself.
Yeah.
Like some things private, especially if my clients are following me. Like
I know.
I want to know
Yeah.
the details of I will make passing comments, or if a client asks, that's different because we have a legal and ethical agreement in place and I'm working with you on something that's not just some random person. And a lot of the times I see it too, even when I posted memes, a lot of snap judgments, a lot of accusations, a lot of me being torn apart in my character. I'm like, first of all, you never met me. Second of all,
When
good
does that happen?
oh, it's happened all the time, especially when I would post very controversial memes. And for a while, I would never like follow people back or comment because
Mm.
I didn't know how Instagram worked. I was like, oh, post a meme, hashtag's funny. And like it would get like thousands and thousands of likes, like kind of I think how Twitter would work. But I wasn't interested in getting in the weeds with people because it's so nuanced. If you want to interpret that way and project onto the post, go for it. I have
Yeah.
never been, or will I ever be, standardly, I would say, I can confidently say, never is the strong leaning side I would go to. I'm not the person to get in comment wars. I'm not the person to comment how outraged I am. Like I'm a very like silently unfollow, and if
Mm.
we're egregious or like really twisted or messed up, I'll just like report the post or like report
Hmm.
it. Like that's just I don't know. That's the way that I
You're
like.
not a call outer.
No. Yeah. And there's times I will without like naming it specifically, or I'll message, or I'll put a message out of like, this is my opinion on this. Like, that's as far as I'll do with like calling out. But my sense of injustice and outrage of some tiny screen and comments, like, what am I going to, I'm not changing that person's opinion. They're clearly coming in guns blazing, ready to have an argument and defend their point, and they're not even open to have a discussion. Rarely have I seen comments on posts that are like, hey, this really rubbed me the wrong way, but I think it's because I thought of it this way. Could you explain? That I will engage with and have a conversation.
No, you never see that.
But that is such a rarity. It's only a few times on the content that I've posted. The majority is like, well, you mean this by that. I'm like, well, I didn't. And this is all in my head. I'm like, well, I didn't. And so if I try and say that I didn't, then I don't get paid.
I remember the time that you turned off the comments on your posts because
that was a good one.
Stuff was going down in the comment section of your post. So you were like,
that was awful.
I'm not doing this. No, we don't get paid for this. So
no. And people started attacking each other, and I'm like, that's not what, or as a person, nor as a professional, is people disparaging one another in ways that you would not say that shit to somebody in person. I can almost guarantee for the majority of people who are keyboard warriors, I don't think that would come out the same way to somebody face to face. I think we can learn a lot from how do we share an opinion that's opposing in a kind way while still maintaining respect for the other person and their autonomy, and either disagree in order to agree or keep the peace, or get to the point where I've had this in discussions with friends with opposing views with anything, mental health treatment, dog breeds, like you name it. I'm sure we've reached a point where it's like, we clearly have our own views of it. And I'm like, well, I really value our relationship or our friendship. I could take it or leave it if we agree on this topic, if we move on. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Like, I think being able to have that level of communication skill is something I strive for, and I like to talk about a lot on my page, is asking the right questions and being open to feedback and receptivity that's housed in a like neutral to positive way. But we're so, as a society, multiple other cultures as well, but very like westernized individualistic cultures, is usually like shame-based parenting was a really big thing, or criticism was a really big thing. And women, especially with the way that estrogen works on our brain, we respond a lot to emotionality, to criticism, to critique, and we correct our behaviors. And so a lot of it is the assumption that everybody operates that way, which is not necessarily the case. And it does take an extra step to ask yourself, like, okay, why am I so critical of that person? Or why do I feel criticized by this statement, especially if it's a totally neutral statement? So I think, we have a lot more to learn that's rapidly developing on social media, I think faster than we can get our hands around.
Yeah, it's not the truth.
Yeah, especially when it comes to mental health. It's such a contentious topic, I think, to kind of push back on or offer an alternate view on, because everybody has a specific or a rather subjective, nuanced experience of their own mental health. And this on posts, like informational posts of like, here is literally what the DSM says about a specific diagnosis. And then, because I like reading in the comments, even people who are admitting on social media or have written in, hey, I have that and I actually experience it this way instead. And then other people like, oh, I actually experience it this way instead. And those are the nice comments. And then there's the comments of like, well, if you don't experience it this way, which is the way that I do, then you must not really. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, this is an option for you to just keep reading, or unfollow. Like that's a legal option available to every human being.
Well, to the people who are just joining or who haven't been here for the last half hour or something, a while ago, I had said that I started my account in part because I was seeing so much black and white information out there on Instagram about how, X, Y, and Z is a trauma response. And how, as a clinician, that was confusing to me. Yeah. And so it really helped me to get into the shoes of a layperson who doesn't have much mental health knowledge like I do, and to think, wow, this person would probably take this fact at face value and not question it. And then that would either be, maybe it could be very helpful, but maybe it would be very harmful because they have say, maybe X, Y, and Z could also be attributed to ADHD or some other diagnosis, but the influencer they're following says it's trauma. So then they're thinking, oh, I have trauma or whatever, so the need for nuance to be able to say such and such might be a trauma response or such and such could be, and if you relate to this, talk to a therapist.
Yes.
It's so important to have nuance in our online content. That's something that I pride myself on. Yep. And I just think it's so important so that we can protect the consumers of mental health content who follow us. I think that we have a responsibility, an ethical one, to the people that follow us to give them the most accurate information as possible. And to me, accuracy means leaving enough room for interpretation where it's just not like you have trauma, right? You might, and if so, here are some resources where you can explore this more or talk to a therapist, etc. So
yes, really good.
I'm
really
summarizing for the people that are tuning in a little bit later.
Yes, I think that's helpful, even as like another reminder that you, as a follower consumer, and like even the languaging of these accounts, it's like you are a follower. Like it's by design that you ascribe to or like or are somehow like not turned on sexually, but like aroused by and so interested by something that's so activating. Like even people will follow accounts like, oh yeah, that person makes me so angry. My clients will say, I'm like, may I ask why you continue to engage in like a social media dynamic with them in that case? And sometimes you're like, oh yeah, you're right. I realized that I like can create my own reality and not follow the person who is activating to me. And sometimes like I had one client be like, oh, it just really gets me going in the gym. Like that's better than pre-workout is to look at this person's posts and be and I'm like,
see that.
Whatever works for you. Honestly, like that's a healthier and sublimation of it. But it's so important to create that nuance, and any creator or creator of content that you follow, you can take it or leave it. If you like some of their information, wonderful. If you don't like other information, also wonderful. And there's people out there who, as an overall, you may not align with, but they can put out a really good post or share a really inspirational quote. And it's like, how can we learn to discern and like take it for what it is? Like I can ingest one ingredient without wanting to buy the whole recipe. And I think that's where discernment can really come into play. And that's the case with, again, any consumer of any content. You can like parts of it without liking all of it. You take it or leave it, leaving room for nuance and digestion of what could the gray area be. And if again, to just recommend to people, if you don't like someone that you're following's content continuously, or you find it's really activating, or it's just really off the mark, it's not helpful, you can unfollow or mute them. You don't actually have to subscribe to it at all anymore if it's not helpful for you. There's certain types of help that are helpful along certain parts of the journey. And sometimes, oh, hold on. So we have a comment. I'm in my final year majoring in counseling. I absolutely relate with what you're both saying. It can be super confusing when there's so many pages related to mental health. Yes. And it sounds like when you joined and when I joined, it was not trending as much as it is now. It may have been, I will be very clear.
I was late on the scene. I've only had my account for less than a year and a half. So
yeah, it hasn't been a remarkably long time. It spreads like wildfire often because it can be helpful, but sometimes it can be like, sometimes a post is so controversial that it spreads. It's not actually accurate information. It's just more like eye-catching or grabbing, and people, it can be jarring. So yeah, I think it's really important to be smart, use your critical thinking skills, be discerning. And if you're really getting activated by somebody's post and you are genuinely wanting maybe help, not like therapy from them, but like you see it and you're like, wow, this is really activating, maybe try bringing it up with a friend or journaling to yourself. Like, what is it about this that is so triggering to me or activating to me, versus like screaming at them in their Instagram comments. So just from
keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
Well, this makes me think of, we actually didn't finish talking about the last part of the post that I posted, I guess, on Friday. It says, maybe you don't need more self-help tips or inspirational quotes. Maybe you need more experiences of safety, security, and laughter. And that laughter part, how important is it for our nervous system to have like belly laughs and to
So
to
important.
have, to have catharsis and
Mhm.
connection, and just to, you know more about neuropsych than I do. I'm sure there's some vagal response there when we laugh, but it's just so important. Sometimes I'll check in with my clients, like, when was the
Mhm.
last time you had a really good belly laugh, and what was it that
Mhm.
facilitated that?
Yeah.
It's so important.
Humor. That's why I named the podcast this one Heal Through Humor, because it's so important to be able to laugh. Like being able to laugh at yourself or at the situation,
Mm,
making fun of, laughter way, like taunting. It's like, wow, that really did not turn out how I expected it to. Like, how can you learn to take some levity and laugh
mhm,
and create different neural pathways for you to actually be a better problem solver of whatever the current problem is? And so laughter is so crucial. It's one of my core values as a human being, and it's one of my traits that is almost like a requirement, if you will, like a kind of a relationship standard of any dynamic, that they have to at least accept my sense of humor, even if they don't get it 100%, and be able to make me laugh, or I can make them laugh. Like humor is such a fabric
mhm,
of the way that I relate to the world, because it's hard enough as it is. Like the world is hard enough
mhm.
place as it is. I think having humor is a nice respite in a lot of very intense, serious times.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I speak for myself, but I also speak for a lot of novice therapists. You take yourself so seriously. And I had to learn how to become lighter. And a lot of that included being able to poke fun at myself. That
Mm-hmm.
was not something that came naturally for a long time. But things felt a lot lighter once I did get to that point.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for that, because I don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
Like you said, life can be so heavy sometimes. So to be
Mm-hmm.
able to infuse levity wherever possible is a really important life skill. It's a great stress management tool. And I encourage people, find out what makes you laugh, right? Do you like stand up, or are there certain
Yeah.
shows, right? Certain people, how can you infuse more of that into your daily or weekly routine?
Yes. I think that is a very poignant end note. I just got the notification from Instagram that our time is coming to a close on our
I didn't know
Instagram.
there was an hour cap.
Yeah, for if we post it as an episode, it gives us an hour cap.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So we will pause here and we can do a part 3, 4,000 through a million if we want, and do another interview. I just want to say thank you for spending the last part of your afternoon/evening doing this interview. And I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Talia.
You're
Bye,
welcome.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.